What the hell happened? Why did Trump stop this? We were so close.
Educate people in the Western Hemisphere that not all regime changes are created equal. Not all military interventions are created equal. Iran is a very unique example that can be an example to the world.
The Islamic Republic itself is imperialist to the core.
Spoiler alert, the Human Rights Council. I mean, it writes itself as a comedy.
You have college professors here who are cheering for Hamas, cheering for Hezbollah, cheering for Khamenei. Think about that.
Bring your Canadian and American flags with you. If you're, in Europe, bring whatever country you're from, along with the Shir al-Khorshid, the Iranian flag, and make the chants in the native language, wherever you are, in Germany or here in North America, and broadcast this to the world.
If you will it, it's not a dream anymore. The people of Iran have willed for freedom. So it's not a dream, and they will achieve it, and it's upon us to bring it for them.
Hi there, this is episode 415 of Roqe. Behold the folly of the United Nations. Expect no help. That's not bitterness, it's an assessment based on evidence, repetition, and structure. The tragedy for Iranians is not simply that the UN will fail to stop a massacre, but that by design it is incapable of doing so, and yet continues to present itself as a meaningful arena of hope. Now look, there are likely some people inside the UN who care deeply about the horror of what is unfolding in Iran. This is not an indictment of them, but it is an indictment of an institution that neutralizes even the best intentions through design, where documentation replaces disruption. The most dangerous illusion the UN sustains is not that it is evil, but that it is effective. For years now, Iranians around the world have appealed to the UN as though it were a moral actor capable of doing something meaningful rather than a procedural one, as though it possessed not only a conscience but the capacity to act on it. That belief is understandable because the language of the UN practically invites it. Human rights, human dignity, protection of civilians, nonviolence, equality, these are not marginal ideals, they are foundational ones. And many of us in the past wanted to believe that these words carried weight. Instead, we got inaction when it was far too late. And now, in the face of a massacre on a scale that should have shattered complacency forever, the pattern hasn't changed. The paradox of the caring United Nations is that it is not a body designed to interrupt violence in real time. It is a body designed to manage consensus among states, including the violent ones. And now cue the outrage of Iranians across the world. Not that we are surprised. Representatives of the murderous Islamic Republic regime are welcomed into UN spaces. Its foreign minister meets with UN leadership, and he's expected to address the institution itself. This is happening while tens of thousands of Iranian families are still counting their dead. The UN will tell you this is diplomacy, but when a regime engaging in a mass killing is given a microphone at the world's most prominent human rights forum, the message is unmistakable. To the regime it says, you remain legitimate. To Iranians it says, your suffering does not interrupt business as usual. The reality is that the United Nations will not advance the Iranian revolution. It will not protect Iranian civilians. It will not stop executions. It will not interrupt mass repression. At best, it will document what happened. At worst, it will legitimize those responsible while doing so. Expect no help. This does not mean we abandon accountability. It doesn't mean we stop collecting evidence. It doesn't mean we ignore the UN altogether. But it does mean we stop mistaking it for the arena where Iran's future will be decided. The UN may record the end of this regime, but it will not bring it about. Expect no help and have no doubt. It's February 12, 2026. This is Roqe. Hi there, welcome to episode 415 of Roqe, Iran Rises. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto, Canada. Salam Dustan Aziz, Durud bar shoma. I hope you're doing well wherever you are around the world. This is the 12th episode of our Iran Rises series, this one entitled The Folly of the UN. Once again, events inside Iran and around the Iranian diaspora are moving super fast. We should note that we are recording this episode at approximately 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time here in Toronto on this Thursday, February 12th. That's around midnight in Iran. As always, we're sharing perspectives and conversations as up-to-date as humanly possible. So coming up on this edition, a clear-eyed conversation about the limits of the United Nations, the outrage felt across the Iranian diaspora about the UN, and what, if anything, the international system is still capable of doing, and where real pressure on the Islamic Republic can actually come from. We've got Lisa Daftari in Los Angeles, Shayan Samii in Washington, and Bahador Alast in Toronto. We'll also talk about the big, massive protests that are going to happen in Toronto and in Los Angeles and Munich this Saturday in a couple of days. We'll see you there. In the meantime, let's get to the panel. This episode of Roqe is brought to you with the support of Avoca Chocolates. Let me tell you how grateful we are that this small, non-Iranian company in Toronto has stepped up to support Iranians in this time and have made free Iran chocolates, with all the profits going to aid the Toronto demonstrations for a free Iran. Avoca has been making handmade artisanal chocolate in Toronto for over 30 years. Family owned and operated, they have dedicated themselves to the art of making delicious treats, including truffles, ice cream, and gelato. Made without compromise, Avoca has focused on high quality ingredients with fair trade chocolate, all made fresh daily in one of their 2 locations in East Toronto. So the free Iran bars are now available. They are top quality Belgian chocolate. They are each handmade and painted, and the profits are being given to the Iranian community. What's better than that for a Valentine's Day present? A free Iran chocolate. You can find out more about them and a link to get the chocolates themselves at avocachocolates.com. avocachocolates.com. Thank you again for your support of the Iranian people. Avoca. Today's episode of Roqe is brought to you in part by Stellar Law. Stellar Law is a boutique litigation firm based in Toronto, founded and led by Rana Nosrat Panah. The firm represents businesses and professionals in commercial and contractual disputes, particularly where relationships have broken down and the consequences are significant. Stellar Law's practice is grounded in careful analysis and strategic decision-making. Much of the work involves contract disputes, shareholder conflicts, and complex business disagreements that require both legal precision and practical judgment. Rana and her team are known for approaching these matters with clarity, focus, and a deep understanding of what is at stake for their clients. For those navigating serious disputes with real commercial impact, check out Stellar Law at stellarlaw.ca. Thanks again to Rana Nosrat and the team at Stellar Law. And if you are Iranian, do note that Stellar Law operates in both English and Persian if you prefer to deal in Persian. All right, let's get to our panel. Lisa Daftari is an Iranian-American foreign policy analyst and journalist with a focus on Middle Eastern policy and counterterrorism. She regularly provides on-air analysis and exclusive reporting on key regional and global developments. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, an international news and U.S. foreign policy publication. She joins us from Los Angeles. Bahador Alast is an Iranian-Canadian full-time engineer and part-time widely followed YouTuber. His channel, Bahador Alast, has grown to be one of the most popular channels in the world, focusing on language and culture. Bahador has always been outspoken about the situation in Iran, and this moment is no exception. He joins us from Toronto. And Shayan Samii is a U.S. national security analyst and Near East Africa and South Asia expert specializing in strategic communications. You may have seen him on Persian news outlets such as Iran International. He joins us from Vienna, Virginia. Hello to you all.
Oh.
Hi, Jian.
Hello. Good to be here.
All right. Well, this episode is called The Folly of the UN. There are so many other things I would want to be talking about, quite frankly, but it is an important one, especially when it comes to the global diaspora and the Iranian community and what we sometimes invest in our aspirations when it comes to the UN. We really have to do an assessment, as I was saying in my opening essay, about the how much energy and oxygen and hope we put into this international body at this point. So a lot of Iranians are not just feeling disappointed, but genuinely outraged at the UN right now. Can you give us your perspective on why. Let's start with you, Lisa.
It's nothing new for those who have been following what goes on at the UN, what goes on at the UN General Assembly once a year when the circus enters New York City. As many of us have said many times, that building is not worth the wonderful real estate it is occupying in New York City. And look, over the years, they have proven that it is a hypocritical body that does not adhere to any of the things that it is supposed to, that are in its founding principles, to create a sense of unity, to call out the bad actors, to promote the good actors. And yet you have them promoting the leaders of the Iran regime, brutal murderers, in subjects like human rights and women's rights. And you think about the bad actors like Russia and China and Iran's regime and others, Cuba, who are part of this body. And then, you never hear them calling out the bad actors, but then I think over the last decade, they've written up Israel 170 plus times, and all the other bad actors in total haven't even gotten 70 write-ups. So, I think it's proving with this latest invite to the Iran regime that it is really a folly, as you called it. I can't think of a better word. It's a shame because they can do great work. Over the years, I've given briefings at the UN multiple times about female mutilation, about ISIS, about freedom of religion in the Middle East, about Christian persecution in the Middle East, about the Assyrians, so many other groups. And every time I would go, there would be this push-pull inside of me. Should I go? Should I even give legitimacy to this organization? And my thought would always be, well, if I don't go, another voice will go. One that does promote, again, the Iran regime or terrorism or, all of the other horrific things that we have seen promoted there. So I think it's a shame. This body has a tremendous potential, but really with the actions, especially again this week, it is doubling down on the direction it wishes to take.
Shayan?
First and foremost, greetings to my dear guests, the esteemed Lisa Daftari, who I've loved and followed many years, and Bahador John. Look, let's face and say it as it is. The United Nations is a fire alarm, whereas people are looking for firefighters. This entity is created because governments could not agree on giving it power and esteem. So they just said, let's have some place that we could go and talk. And for the last 30 to 45 years, it has become a useless entity because it does not stand up for freedom, for aggression, for murder, for things that matter to people's daily lives. It's very good at providing support or humanitarian aid if there is an earthquake or something here and there. But as far as being able to do something, no. Why? Because when they created it, they on purpose made it a feckless entity. Now, with respect to the invitation that Roqe has received, okay, I understand. Some people are going to come and say, oh, no, it's not an invitation per se, because Iran is part of the UN, so they get a right to speak at this Human Rights Council
Let
meeting.
me just explain, just because we haven't introduced that part, that on February 23rd, Roqe is invited to speak to is it the General Assembly or to the Human Rights Council?
It's the Human Rights Council. It's an entity, a part of the organization in Geneva.
Spoiler alert, the Human Rights Council. I mean, it writes itself as a comedy, but go ahead, Shayan. You were going to say something about that.
Yeah, so what they have done is they say Iran, because it's part of the UN, has a right to participate. Fair enough. But does that mean that it has to be given the legitimacy to be the nominee of the Asia and Oceania for participating in the Social Affairs Committee as well, to provide a detailed about social life of people in those countries? But let's figure who voted for Iran: China, Indonesia, Russia. So basically, all of the ones who are using the Islamic Republic to further their own malicious efforts. So, what we need to do is we need to put pressure on the countries that are going to be speaking just before Araqchi and just after Araqchi to talk about the massacre in Iran, to talk about the mutilation of people that has occurred, or the point blank shooting of people that has taken place in 2 days last month.
Okay.
I'll explain more.
Bahador.
I completely agree, but one thing I've said for a very long time, and I have to keep reminding fellow Iranians, is we cannot depend on the United Nations to even understand our struggle. The United Nations is an organization where the Islamic Republic is a part of. They are seen as the legitimate government of Iran. So all of these resolutions, all of these condemnations, anything, if they ever do or say anything, it is just symbolic. This is not going to help our struggle. And on top of that, UN member states have their own political and economic interests. And when you have countries like Russia and China, which have veto power, and they have a major interest in keeping the Islamic Republic regime in power, they're not going to do anything in our favor. So I think it's very foolish, really, to depend on the UN to do anything for us and our struggle. And as I said, these resolutions or anything, condemnations are all symbolic. There's never going to be any meaningful action. The UN is an organization that sees the regime in Iran as its partner, basically. They give the Islamic Republic a platform to come and repeat their lies and propaganda in front of the entire world. So to me, I never expected anything from the UN, to be honest. And I honestly encourage other Iranians to stop this idea, this foolish idea of thinking the UN is somehow going to come help us or help our cause or even care about our struggle, because there are other interests that the member states have that go far beyond. For them, they have their interests that goes far beyond what we are trying to achieve.
I feel like Bahador, I feel like we being the global Iranian community, there's a bit of a paradoxical relationship with the UN, which is that every time there's a crisis, more atrocities, an uprising of the people, this being the biggest by far that has occurred in the last 47 years, this moment. We appeal to the UN. We hope that there'll be something there. And sometimes when there is some kind of movement, we actually celebrate it and we trumpet it. You remember where there was a representative of the regime on the UN status of women, or some ridiculous, another one of these ridiculous positions in the time right after the Women Life Freedom movement, and that they got removed from that committee or whatever it was, and that was celebrated by the global Iranian community. So it's kind of a push and pull of what do we expect and what do we want. And some of these documents, I mean, the UN Charter on Human Rights or the Rights of the Child, et cetera, those are actually great documents. If you read them, what they're advocating for is great in principle. And if you want to cross-check, the regime and hope that the UN keeps them in check, it's a wonderful thing. And yet, each time, as you all have said, we see no results, no action. It's almost, it's almost, you wonder whether it's false oxygen and energy placed there. So my question to you would be, should we just give up on it? In other words, should we just close the folder on the UN, never mention it, and put our energies elsewhere? Or is the fight and the attention still worth it somehow? Bahador, you first.
I don't like to use the word give up, but we shouldn't depend on the UN. The UN is not there to help us or even understand our struggle. We are trying to topple the Islamic Republic regime. The UN sees the Islamic Republic regime as a partner, basically, as someone that is a part of their organization. So think of it this way: you can, you work with a group of people, and you have disagreements. You might even condemn them or say, what you did there was not right, but you're not trying to get rid of them. They're still a part of your organization. That's how they see the Islamic Republic. They don't view that regime the same way we do. And the Islamic Republic benefits from the UN. They use it as a platform to go on there and, as we've seen numerous times, repeat their propaganda in front of the entire world.
Lisa,
So, in my opinion,
Lisa, would you go so far as to say that not only is the UN ineffective, but it works to the advantage of the Islamic
100%.
Republic regime?
I think I want to zoom everyone's attention out from the UN and talk about why we're seeing this shift, not just at the UN, at our universities, in the media, and it's all the same. It's pro-Islamic Republic, it's pro-terror, and it's anti-West. And it's compromised. We are all compromised, and we shouldn't rely, as we just heard, on any one of these institutions to tell us the truth. I do think there's a shift. I've said this for so many years. If there should be regime change in Iran, it's going to challenge a lot of these institutions that are compromised because there is an influence here. There was a reset of the global stage, and what we're seeing at the UN is a manifestation of that reset. Now, if the regime in Iran changes, what are we going to see? We're going to see that equation turned on its head. We're going to see the Abraham Accords explode to say that the people of the Middle East are not as extreme as those who are doing their advocacy here in the West. I mean, think about that. You have college professors here who are cheering for Hamas, cheering for Hezbollah, cheering for Khamenei. Think about that. And then you have these millions of people in the Middle East, led by the Iranians themselves, who are freedom fighters, who want a life away from terrorism, who want a life away from extremism, who are saying no to Islam, and that is their choice.
But help me understand what you're saying, because in the case of the college professors or the university campuses or the student activists, et cetera, that you could say, I mean, to put it crudely, they're buying into some woke anti-imperialist ideology that is their narrative now, and it's anti-West, et cetera. But surely you're not arguing that Russia and some African nations are exhibiting that same ideology.
Of course, I mean, no, they're taking advantage of that ideology. That ideology is part of soft power play. That ideology is part of a psyops. That ideology is what has made America weaker on the global stage, and it has promoted China, Russia, the Iran regime. They're taking advantage of it. It behooves them to allow the United States to tank the way that it has because of this ideology. It behooves them to watch us fight on the streets of Minnesota and on college campuses over Hamas and Hezbollah. It behooves them to watch the media not report the truth because it will help them when they don't report accurately on Russia or they don't tell us the truth about what China is up to. So I think we have a much larger problem, but I think the UN is a great example of how we have become compromised and how the ideology has been used against us.
We should probably issue a slight disclaimer here that we all know, and I am sure there are some well-meaning people. The UN's a big global organization, and there are some people who do care and who are working there and probably on some level and on the ground level doing some good work in the name of the UN. But with that said, Lisa, would you go so far as to say we should just not engage with the UN at all and just
No, I would pick up where you left off and say that is the reason why those good people have stayed there. That's the reason why great professors stay and fight. That's the reason why there are people in the media who are either independent journalists or part of a larger media, legacy media that stay and fight. I mean, I'm against cancel culture in this respect to say whatever you cancel, whatever you walk away from, you are just surrendering to the other voice. So let us be heard. Look, we live here in the West. That is why we have the ability to be the voice of people that are in Iran or anywhere else that need our help. We are the voice of the voiceless, as we have always said. So if we quiet our voices, if we don't use that freedom that we have, the freedom of speech, then what are we doing? I mean, we cannot surrender to this influence, to this ideology. And I've said this many times in my interviews. It seems like when we had the Cold War, everyone was very cognizant that ideology is a tangible ideology that is a threat to the West. Excuse me. We're not seeing, and we should be seeing, we should open our eyes to this ideology and understand that this is equally a threat, if not more of a threat, because they have social media, they have bots, they have cyber attacks, they have ways of attacking without physically being here. So soft power has been put on steroids, and we have to wake up to that threat before it's too late.
Shayan, do you agree?
I do, and I want to add to what Lisa was saying, that the UN has become an anti-West and an anti-freedom, at least perspective. I will add anti-Semitism as well. The UN, anything that happens remotely, whether Israel is responsible or not, they will find a way to condemn Israel. But the same thing about the college professors. How many times we saw encampments created at UCLA, Columbia, anywhere else, you name it, in between. And about the massacre in Iran, chirps, nothing. You don't hear anything. Why? Because there is this level of disconnect that exists. But I will take us back a little while, because us Iranians, we have a nostalgia about the United Nations, about the fact that Iran at some point became the chairman of the IAEA, and we have a love affair with the United Nations, at least as an ideal and an idea. And what happened to that? In the 1990s, we had a bunch of our influential singers sing a song, Solh Sefid o Abi, a white and blue peace. That it was reminiscent of the UN and how the UN can come and help the Iranians. But Iranians have now learned that the United Nations is beholden to a series of behind-the-scenes political plays that, for example, your China and your Russia play, and they will pay African countries to vote the way they want to vote. So it has become a corrupt political process, and us Iranians need to take ourselves away from that and realize that basically we have to choose our friends. We cannot rely on organizations or entities to come and do our bidding, because as far as UN is concerned, it is useless, and it has ways to go to improve, and the United States has started pushing in that direction, but US is only one country. But more importantly, the Iranians have realized that it is by sticking together and unifying their thoughts that they can advance their cause, instead of aligning or begging at the doorsteps of a useless entity.
Let me try this out on you guys, and maybe this applies less to Lisa, who's been perhaps more consistent in her feelings about the UN over the years. Not that I think any of the rest of us had massive illusions, but I mean, even during the period after the killing of Mahsa Amini, I did a video essay that went viral saying, kids are dying in Iran, come on, UN, help us. And I think on some level I thought, well, maybe this will make a difference. Maybe the UN will do something. I feel like there's been I don't want to say a loss of innocence, but maybe a maturing of the Iranian community over the last few weeks in particular, around some of these issues, where the place that the UN occupies for us is one of those organisms, or one of those bodies, one of those partners that is considered the world. When we say we want the world to act on Iran, we want the world to come and help. And that world, that idea of the world, has become more and more narrow, to the point where we're actually not really talking about aid organizations anymore. We can do an entire show on where the hell is Doctors Without Borders, but it's not our priority, because we know that there are people dying right this second, and it's not the cleanup that we're interested in. We're interested in help and attention right now, which is why we look at the United States and we go, well, there's the firepower that can come and sort of help here. And it's not something the rest of the world or others necessarily. I was in a shop yesterday, and there was a friend of mine. He happens to be of Arabic descent, I think Lebanese, I think. And he was telling me, how's it going about Iran? Well, of course, he said, well, of course, we wouldn't want war. You don't want any kind of intervention of that kind. Fully expecting me to say, well, yes, of course, I wouldn't want that. And I said, no, that's actually what Iranians, for the most part, want right now. And he couldn't get his head around it. But for us, we understand. We've kind of graduated past the point of accepting almost anything else. Bahador, do you want to reflect on what I'm saying, if it makes sense to you?
Absolutely. And I think I agree with you, Jian. What we need to do, and it would be a lot more useful for us to try to educate people than depend on the UN. Like, for instance, why do people on the political left support the Islamic Republic? They see them as this anti-imperialist, anti-American entity that is fighting against the Western aggression, right? So we have to educate them that this is a really false narrative. If you want to talk about imperialism, that the Islamic Republic itself is imperialist to the core. So this is the reason I say depending on the UN is not just we shouldn't depend on it. It's also counterproductive because it gives us false hope. As you remember, when these resolutions are passed, people have this hope like something positive has happened. But did it achieve anything? No, it doesn't achieve anything. It does nothing. It doesn't mean that we give up on the UN or that we turn against them. No, but we can't depend on them. We can't depend on this organization to do anything meaningful to help our struggle. This is why I put my focus and energy on trying to educate people with facts that they're not normally exposed to when it comes to the Islamic Republic.
Okay. Lisa, I know you wouldn't argue that it's consensus that you still have detractors within the Iranian community, et cetera, but do you feel like to a certain extent a lot of Iranians have caught up to a position that you've held for years?
I give a talk on this actually about the coming of age of the Iranian people to mostly non-Iranian audiences so that they understand where we are today. But even for the Iranian audiences, I think it's great to be aware of the fact that if I start with, not 47 years, but let's say 1999, it was university-led, right? Completely university. 2009, we had the Green Revolution. It was more so the cool kids of Tehran. You didn't see so many protests all throughout Iran. It was mostly centered in cities, and it was a lot of the younger kids coming out. First, it started out as reform. This is a contested election. All of a sudden, they started dabbling with, let's just say, we don't want the whole thing, and it kind of felt good to them. But then, obviously, that quieted down. The Obama administration was, preferred a deal, and that kind of shattered their hopes. Over the last 15 years, we saw so many other protests. It was the egg protest, the Bazari protest, the teachers protest. But each time, while it was centered on one cause, it brought the people of Iran to center around the main issue, which was the regime itself. And we spoke about this off air about how when I started talking about sanctions, focused sanctions that would mostly focus on the sectors that pertain to the regime itself and not to the people, even though we know that it does trickle down onto the people. They called me Vatan Furush. They called me a sellout, a traitor, because the Iranian people, many of them couldn't understand why an Iranian like myself, who cares about the Iranian people and their future, would advocate for economic punitive measures against my own people, not understanding that that's the way to crack the regime if we want this regime gone. Then we talked about the JCPOA. I spoke out against it. Many people who understood, like many of yourselves, understood that it was no to the JCPOA. This was not a nuclear program or a deal or anything that would benefit the people themselves. It would be money going towards their weapons program, towards their proxies. And, again, people nowadays, no to a deal, no to a deal. We want, as you said, military intervention against our own country, on our own soil. We want it. So you have to understand that over 47 years, it is the desperation of the people of Iran, the way that they have lived, the economy, the lack of rights, the lack of just freedom to live the way they want to live. Now they're telling the world there is no going back. We've come to this age, and we've understand that the only way forward is to shed ourselves of this brutal regime.
Yeah, and by the way, when we say we, I mean, certainly my governing principles take our lead from the people inside Iran, right?
Absolutely.
That's why Prince Reza Pahlavi makes sense. They're the people inside Iran. We've always said self-determination for the Iranian people. Well, they're chanting his name, so either we're going to agree with them or we're going to come up with our own thing. And
Exactly.
similarly, it may not be scientific, but all of the people I speak to who are inside Iran, friends, sources, a couple of extended family members, all of them say we're waiting for Trump. We're waiting for something
Absolutely.
to happen, which might be hard to explain to somebody in the West, but we fully understand what that means.
Right. And
Shayan?
sorry, so one added point is after the 12-day war, they were wondering why Trump and Bibi didn't finish the job, and people couldn't understand that. I think there was a lot of people who were, oh my gosh, Israel has a war against Iran, and they wanted to pick sides. But the people, again, inside, just listen to the people inside. And just to bring this full circle, you don't hear them saying, United Nations, pay attention, as we saw in previous protests. You hear them rallying around Reza Pahlavi, which is very telling, again, of this coming of age.
Go ahead, Shayan.
Yeah, to add to what Lisa was saying, the basic point is that some of these people don't understand. I have detractors who are calling me or writing me comments every day that you're a sellout because you're asking for a foreign entity or for a government to attack your motherland. It's not that. What I'm after is I'm trying to stop genocide. I'm trying to stop massacre. And I'm trying to stop people not being able to express their thoughts. That's what the difference is. And that's why even after the 12-day war, I had hundreds upon hundreds of calls and text messages that, what the hell happened? Why did Trump stop this? We were so close. So it is not that it's our desire. And one other thing is there's this false notion that some people are bandying around that the number of deaths that has occurred in Iran is because of the call to strike and protest by His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi. That's not the case. The one and only person responsible for the deaths is Ali Khamenei and nobody else. And some of these reformists or so-called reformists, even today, one of them said that, what do you expect when law enforcement people are out there and see people want to kill them? Of course they have to open fire. What? I mean, this is the fallacy that we're living, and the people at the UN on down, they have received a series of false notions and falsehoods, and they have built a massive home on top of it. I just add one more thing. A few days ago, there was a conference with the former chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, and he again repeated this whole falsehood about 1953 democratically elected and coup in Iran and all of that. Nobody wants to listen to the fact that I'm not trying to defend anything, but I'm here to express the truth. And the truth is, at that point, even a prime minister is appointed by the parliament and approved by the monarch, or nominated by the monarch and approved by the parliament. And that's it. There is no election. So at any given point, the monarch can say, "You're out."
It's another show. That's a full.
I know.
That's a full show on most of that. Let's.
A good point. But a good point.
But what I'm
The
trying
myth
to
of Mosata.
Yes.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that the world leaders don't also know the truths about Iran. And that's why we need to have these type of conversations and also be the voice of Iranians who are dying to just gain freedom.
Yeah, a lot of these conversations, it might sound self-serving because I'm a diaspora kid who does the show in English, but a lot of these conversations need to take place in English, and I see Persian Twitter, going in circles, and I can sort of read some of it, and I Google Translate to read the rest of it, and I think, well, this is great, but this is an echo chamber. Like, the Republicans in the U.S. that you want to on side are not reading Persian Twitter, so that's something we need to figure out. Lisa, before I'd be bereft if I didn't ask you, because it's your it's your file, it's your forte. Since the last time you were on the show, which I think was about 3 weeks ago or something, we haven't seen the big dramatic action from the Trump administration. We have seen what are either weird meetings or negotiations and kind of a weird pussyfooting on and off relationship about and tweets about maybe they want a deal, they don't want a deal. From your perspective, I mean, it's the billion-dollar question that Iranians are, pinning their hopes on around the world. But where are we at with intervention when it comes to this revolution?
So, without going into my crystal ball, which I wish I had, right now we have a President Trump who understands the threat of the regime. That is why he has moved so many of our assets in the region to pressure them. In his first administration, he had the maximum pressure campaign. One of the reasons we even believe that the Iranian people had the wiggle room to go out onto the streets is because of that failing economy, because of the sanctions, because of the maximum pressure campaign. This time around, before Trump even came into office, many of us who have eyes and ears in Washington, D.C., wanted to push for not just a maximum pressure campaign, but also a maximum support campaign that would support the Iranian people should they come out and create the revolution that they have done. So now we're dealing with, again, an administration in Washington that understands this. He understands that it's an opportune moment. He understands that the regime is at its weakest possible. Now, many people believe that he will go forward with a deal because that's what he does. He wrote a book on deals. He loves a good deal. And why would he be weakening the regime? And why would he be taking military assets to the region if he didn't want a deal? Well, I do know for a fact that Trump has people all around him telling him that this, first of all, that the negotiations shouldn't just focus on nuclear, and we're not even going to get what we want out of the nuclear because the regime will not make concessions to go down to zero, and that is the no tolerance threshold with which Trump entered the deals. The people around him have told him that this deal has to include limitation on ballistic missiles. It has to include their support of terror proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and it should talk about human rights and the killing of protesters. Now, I don't believe there is a good deal to be had. I've said it before. Any good deal would require the DNA of this regime to be changed, and it cannot. They cannot be good. They are evil, and that is the way they move forward. They are not trying to behave badly. They're just being themselves. You cannot tell a snake not to be a snake. And I say this because I want people to truly, I want to emphasize what this is and what we're dealing with here. It's as if, the United States or Canada would all of a sudden be ruled by ISIS or the Muslim Brotherhood, and we couldn't get rid of them for 47 years. That's the analogy. So going forward, I think that, in the meantime, I know every single hour that goes by, I'm talking about the Iranian people's perspective, and I hear that every day. I'm talking to people in Iran. There are more people killed. They're becoming more and more vulnerable. They're more and more scared. They're going into hospitals. They're going into clinics. Ripping families apart, going into their homes, interrogating. We get that part. On the other side, if the military buildup and if there should be a strike, if that comes prematurely, we're only going to see more protesters killed and we won't see an end to this regime. If there are military strikes, they have to be so precise and so well targeted and the intention, the meaning, the definition of it has to be such that it will break this regime and it will allow the people of Iran to come out onto the streets in the hundreds of thousands to finally topple this regime. The reason I'm saying that is because the time will benefit us. We will benefit the region. It will benefit the United States and Israel, who are putting in missile defense capabilities. They are getting more and more intel every single time they scare the regime. It's like cockroaches coming out in the middle of the night. You know where they are. You know where they're hiding assets. You know where their vulnerabilities will be to hit. So in my assessment,
but the time isn't benefiting the people who are being killed each day.
Absolutely not, and that's absolutely that is the calculation. And I said there's two sides that we have to look at here. If we want this to work, it has to be properly timed. We're looking at the people of Iran. Innocent people are being killed every hour. So this is, again, it's very, very nuanced. For the Trump administration, this is not a Venezuela. This is not a slam dunk. This is not a foreign policy move with a pretty bow on top that can be accomplished overnight. And I know the people of Iran understand that. They've waited 47 years, but I do know that there is pressure on the American administration, on Trump's administration. There are people and generals in the proper places informing him, and I know that he knows. He knows the adversary that we're up against. And I do think when President Trump talks about a red line, he will not be another Obama and Syria. He will want to make good on his promise, and hopefully we will see this, this will be handled in the best way possible.
Okay, I have a final question for all of you, but before I get to that, did either of you, Bahador or Shayan, want to comment on what Lisa just said?
Well, I think that the role that we can play as Iranians and the diaspora is what we mentioned before, is to be the voice of the people in Iran. And when people call us Batan Furush, as Lisa mentioned, or traitors to our country, I always give them the example of how many Americans of German descent in the 1940s joined the US Army to fight to topple the Nazi regime in Germany. And nobody looks back and says those were traitors. Nobody looks back and says, oh, these people were Batan Furush. They were people who were against their country. No, they're seen as heroes. They're seen as people who liberated their country. So why is it that we, after all these years, that we have tried every internal method to topple this regime and have been always met with bullets and executions and mass arrests, have finally reached a conclusion? I would say collectively, I would say the majority of Iranians have reached this conclusion, that the only way to bring down this regime, which is willing to kill as many people as possible to stay in power, is to get foreign help. Why are we called traitors? Why are we looked at in a certain way as if we don't love or care about our country?
Very well said, Shayan.
I just add this point that when you see from Fox News's very hawkish General Keane to CNN's very mild and moderate Jim Stavridis, who was NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, both of them talk about the fact that a good deal with Iran is a deal that contains none of the words Islamic Republic. Then you know that you have basically made the point. You just need to amplify it. You just need to remind the people in the Trump administration and also foreign entities that the people of Iran, despite the fact that everybody is saying a military intervention is killing people, no, the people of Iran are inviting that because they are asking for help. So we also have a responsibility to amplify their words, and that's something we're doing and we should continue to do.
Okay. Final question to the three of you. Thank you, Shayan. This weekend is it's really quite extraordinary. I mean, I don't really remember something like this where because I don't think there has been one where everyone in the Iranian community around the world is aware of a global day of action. It's focused primarily on 3 cities, but I know there's some actions happening in other cities, but it's going to be massive here in Toronto. It's going to be very, very big in LA, and it's going to be huge in Munich. What are your hopes for what this mass demonstration could accomplish? Let's go Bahador, Shayan, and last word to Lisa.
Well, I think it goes back to a point I made earlier in that we need to use these demonstrations and protests to amplify the voices of people inside Iran, which are silenced. That's why I encourage people, make the slogans in English, make the coverage in English, broadcast it to the world, because these are the protests, these are the demonstrations where people can freely express themselves and tell the world what people in Iran want. When there are those out there who always like to criticize us and say, oh, this is the Iranian diaspora who's saying this. But no, in fact, if you listen to the voices inside Iran, what they consider to be the diaspora is actually a lot more aggressive and extreme inside Iran. We just have to play that role. We have to be their voice. So I encourage everybody who's there, bring your Canadian and American flags with you. If you're, in Europe, bring whatever country you're from, along with the Shir Khorshid, the Iranian flag, and make the chants in the native language, wherever you are, in Germany or here in North America, and broadcast this to the world as much as you can in English so that they can understand, they can know what's going on. This is my biggest, most important message to everybody who's attending this weekend.
Nicely said, Shayan.
You know, what I believe we need to do is, number one, don't lose hope, and don't allow people in Iran to lose hope. If we are saying something and we don't know it, don't just be a naysayer. Try to make sure that the people of Iran are hearing that we here understand their plight, know what we have to do, and can stand united. We have to stick together. We have to have one voice. And for the love of God, we should not allow people to come and drive a wedge and say, oh, Reza Pahlavi wants to become the ruler of Iran. No. Dump the falsehoods. Tell the people that the truth is we need to have an orderly transition. And when we have somebody who is willing to give up his time, his life, his security, his safety, to just do this for the future of Iran, let's not bring about the fact that, oh, does he want to bring his daughter and make her the next prince of Iran? Don't do these. It is upon us. That's number one. Number two, for all of us who are English speakers as well as Farsi speakers, we have to appear on global media and invite global media to come to these events. What we have done in Washington, D.C., and what I'm sure friends have done in other places, to amplify the need for people of Iran's voices to be heard. And number three is, I've said this on your show a few times, Jian, but it's worth repeating. As they say, if you will it, it's not a dream anymore. The people of Iran have willed for freedom. So it's not a dream, and they will achieve it, and it's upon us to bring it for them.
Last word to you, Lisa.
Oh, so beautiful. It's true. We're only here to amplify their voices. My panelist said, my co-panelist said so many wonderful things, but we have to remember we didn't come this far to just come this far. And I say that on behalf of the Iranian people who are sacrificing their lives just for freedom, and we shouldn't take that for granted. So when we come out onto these protests, do the interviews, share the English language interviews. If you're watching this on any social media, share it. If there is any way to educate other people in English, in whatever language, share it. And I think it's very important to educate people in the Western Hemisphere that not all regime changes are created equal. Not all military interventions are created equal. Iran is a very unique example that can be an example to the world that we are trying to free the people from an insurgency, from people who are holding them hostage. And I know the world will be better for it. The region will be more secure. The whole entire world will be free of this #1 state sponsor of terror. And again, if we're here again to amplify the voices of the Iranian people, we have to stay united. Don't get into it with other fellow Iranians or anyone who believes that they're doing what's right for the Iranian people. We want to stay on message, on point, just for the Iranian people. And I know we will be victorious.
Hear, hear.
Nicely done. Lisa, Shayan, Bahador, thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. Vaughan, merci.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Khudafez.
Have a great day. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you very much again to Shayan, Lisa, and Bahador. We've been getting some great comments from you guys in our email. I was actually going to read some on this show today, but I'll do so on Monday. Info@roqemedia.com is where you can send us feedback. Info@roqemedia.com. I promise I will read some of the best letters that we've received, emails we've received in our inbox on Monday. You can also, of course, comment on any or all of our platforms, on Apple, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Telegram, Spotify, etc. thanks again to all the folks who've been working so hard on this weekend, making these protests happen. We'll see you if you're in the Toronto area or if you're anywhere in Canada, coming to Toronto for the big demonstration here starting at noon tomorrow at Yonge and Steeles. Saturday, not tomorrow. You can go there tomorrow and get ready, but see you Saturday for that. Also in Los Angeles, of course, and in Munich. This is Full Time for Roqe for today. Thanks to the amazing core team who put this show together twice a week. Savvy Roham, Super Parisa, and Tina, the photo and video queen. And special thanks as well to our extended team, Smart Pega, Charming Kimia, Talented Anahita, Methodical Kave, and the Rising Keon. Thank you to all of you out there who are supporting and sharing our content, telling people about Roqe, bringing people to the show. We really believe that it's important to get information out into the Iranian space, not just in Persian, but in English as well. That's why we created this show. So we appreciate you sharing and subscribing. You can subscribe on any or all of our platforms, including, of course, on YouTube and Telegram, where we're bilingual. You can find the show on Instagram at Roqe Media. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. And as ever, Mizun Bashi.